I'll add to that answer as well. In the work that we're doing on this project, one of the things that we highlighted is the unique ways that the Dine people use the San Juan River and its riparian corridor, which is much different from a non-indigenous water user. And that really relates to culture, spirituality, in addition to the livelihoods such as farming, ranching, hunting. And so the risk assessment is generally only taking into account the recreational aspect. And so through the surveys that we did, we identified 400 different ways that the Dine people use the river and the riparian corridor. And the highest type of usage was categorized as spiritual and cultural. And then the farming and ranching. And so after the spill, it was identified that the people said that they used the river 60% less in those categories after the spill. So there's an impact there in the sense that the people began to engage less in the way that they used to with the river because of the spill. So that's one really important aspect that was raised, is that the Dine people use the river and its riparian corridor in unique ways that also relate to spirituality and culture.
Let me just say a little bit. Threats. You ask about threats. One of the things I tell my grandchildren is, when I was your age, we could rely on the rains. We could rely on the fact that there will be snows. That's not the case anymore. That's a threat. The fact that we have this methane cloud over us and what it's doing to our bodies. The incidence of respiratory illnesses that are amongst our peoples. I don't know how it is up here in your part of the country, but down our way, it's the incidence is greater than what it should be, and the cause that we are beginning to target is the power plants, is all of this development that is happening. The threat of hydraulic fracturing. What kind of threat does that present to our aquifers? We don't know. All we know is that it is a real threat, and we must stop this dastardly business of fracking.
Ja, keren was het een succes en ze ja, tenzij kennen slow, maar misschien dan is het touchy, best is chi, aro is versnee, dat is chi, do naubani, dat is een hele, wat out the names. My name is Daniel So. And the introduction is we're working real hard to try to have a moratorium declared on oil and gas leases within the Greater Chaco landscape. So the threat these companies have refined the hydraulic fracturing process. That horizontal pipe that extends a mile to a mile and a half. They have perforated holes when they hydraulic frac. They use nitrogen, compressed nitrogen gas as part of the mix. So there are many, M-A-N-Y, many, M-I-N-I, explosions occurring underground that you or I don't even feel. So in doing that, they're causing cavities within the structure of Mother Earth. And when all of those horizontal, multi-stage horizontal development, as they're now being called, and all of it is added up, there is going to be some restructuring of the strata within the layers of Mother Earth. And so that's the part that is the unseen threat. The aspect that those mini explosions are then having to be released. In science, right? For every action, there's a reaction. That comes back up. And that methane gas is released. It's flared, it's vented, and it's purposely leaked. Why? Because it has low value in the eyes of the oil and gas industry. So, that methane comes down. Navajo people depend on the medicinal and the ceremonial plants. It's part of our indigenous healthcare system. Those plants, they don't like what's going on. They move. And we have the folks that gather those that have to go farther and farther to try to find it. And so those aspects are real. Our communities are impacted. You know, in the 70s, we were already deemed a national sacrifice area. Well, it continues to this day. And so, what our panelists have brought to put in our sphere of thinking, each and every one of us that is here, let's use it. I basically, I don't know what an activist is, but I find myself speaking up. And the concept is the 3 chapters, Torion, O, and Sinam Counselor, formed into an alliance. And the basic message I brought to them was, hey, our sphere of knowledge, our sphere of influence is small compared to the multinational corporations that we're having to deal with. We're going to have to build an alliance. We're going to have to reach out to find people that basically have the expertise, the knowledge to come help us. And so we formed what has come to be known as the Greater Chaco Coalition. And so we've been pretty active, and we've started working on what we've, in the federal system, the system of science, health impact assessment. We've initiated and done 3 issues of a health impact report, and we're applying to get the approval to do a full-scale health impact assessment. And through the help of the Care, Sierra Club, Wild Earth Guardians, the Max and Anna Levinson Foundation, the San Juan Health Equity Partnership, we've gathered monies to do air monitoring, water testing, and basically started doing, having statements from the community people. But we had a great Navajo environmentalist, the late great Larry Emerson, that basically convinced us brown-skinned people, hey, let's look at this through a Navajo lens. Let's look at it through our lifeway system. And so we did the original survey, and it is entitled Hojongonata Evaluation. And since his passing, we've continued that work, and we will continue our research. And now it's taking on the Hojongonata Dine Center Research Evaluation. And that'll be a tool that will be used at the same level as a health impact assessment. But again, just the aspect of, that's our way of looking at the total impact. The health impact assessment talks about 1 person, 2 persons, 3 person data. But over on this side, we talk about self. We talk about family. We talk about relatives. We talk about clans, community, how it impacts the plants, the animals, the ceremonial spots, the single offering points, the community offering points, the community or clan ceremonial spaces, and how those are impacted. So those are the aspects that we are now building, and we hope to become a resource to the other folks that are also impacted. The folks down in the Baca Pruitt area, they're still having to deal with the tailings piles. In the Crown Point area, they're still fighting in situ uranium mining, much the same technology as hydraulic fracturing. So those are some of the things that we as a community of voices are developing for ourselves, so that we can tell our own story, we can present our own perspective, that the total impact is much greater than what the EPA or what the BLM wants. They want data. But that connectedness to each other, to the land, to the water, to the air, is not part of the data that they want. And so this is what we're pushing forward. And it's a concept that I think that, as Janine says, is other indigenous peoples in other states, in other parts of the country, really want to see what we do with this model. And in certain ways, they've already taken a piece of it and started to develop for themselves. So it's the impact is great. It's multi-level, all the way from the depths of the earth to what we can see as a methane cloud, or the smog or the pollution that is visible to the naked eye. But it goes beyond that, the spirituality of a person. And Brother Chiliazi so eloquently expresses it. Maiche Setsui Shinale, our grandkids, both on the maternal aspects and as well as the paternal aspects. That's why we speak up. We have to. And thanks for the opportunity, and you made great food. I didn't eat coming up, and I was ready to almost pull over at McDonald's. But I came up, and thank you. It's good food, and again, it's going to take all of us. It's going to take all of us to hang on to this part of our world, this part of our community. Because there's nobody else that's going to do it. Everybody else is looking at a dollar sign. How to make more and more and more. So, thank you.
We need to hang on to each other, and I mean that in every way possible. One of the things when talking about threats and talking about risk is we need to constantly be asking ourselves, are we addressing a symptom? Are we addressing the actual problem? Because a lot of things that mask themselves as movements and as solutions are really only addressing a symptom of the larger problem. And I feel like we found, as indigenous peoples, we found an easy way to determine which one is which. You're addressing a symptom when you're making slow, careful progress, and you can hope to maybe get some answers in 10 to 15 years. You're addressing a threat when they come, and they come with their guns, and they come with their mace, and they come with their least lethal military grade weapons. And they come when we stand together. That's when we realize if we're addressing the threat or a symptom. If we're playing into the politics of distraction, or if we're actually taking our power back. What Daniel's talking about this move to pass a moratorium on fracking. Mora County did it in New Mexico, and we're mirroring a similar temporary moratorium in McKinley County against uranium mining. For those of you who don't know, McKinley County has the highest cancer deaths in the state of New Mexico, cancer-related deaths in the state of New Mexico. So it seems like we would have an obvious case for enacting a temporary 3-year moratorium to better study and understand the impacts of uranium mining. But things like corporate personhood, things like international trade agreements, and policies enacted by the Bureau of Land Management at both the state level and the federal level, those things show us how they perceive our power, our ability to protect ourselves. in both the McKinley County place and also Mora County, and probably what's going to happen with the fracking moratorium being proposed in Chaco Canyon is not going to stop us, but is that the corporations can argue that they can sue people for trying to protect their own communities because we're keeping them from making a profit. Now, this is complicated legalese, but that's essentially what it says. How dare they? How dare they make such an argument when it's our children, our bodies, that have to absorb the impacts of what their activities entail? You know, that once we take those blinders off, once we build this communication, once we build this networking, once we build this solidarity, it becomes much harder for them to make those arguments. Because we can realize that that's a man-made law, and we have every power and ability to change it to better protect ourselves and our communities. And we're better able to exercise that power when we do it together.
Okay, my name was given to me by grandmother or grandfather in Michigan, where we have the Great Lakes, where I moved from 7 or 9, 8 years, I don't know how long you're thinking. Aquino de earthling woman. Okay. I was a doctor. Now, I would want to say that's my Native American name. Okay? Aquino de earthling woman. However, I study health. I've been studying health since I was a little girl, wanting to know what caused cancer. Why don't we die naturally? Since I was 7, I wanted to know that answer. Anyways, it would be helpful for anybody to know this, but kelp helps with radiation in the body. It takes it out. So, that's all I wanted to say. There's something in nature that gives us something that can get it away, get it out of us. There's probably other things as well. But my other curious thing is about brain aneurysms and the health, how the incidences in Durango, for instance, of birth defects and brain aneurysms due to the environmental impact. The hidden things that we don't see in our water, the fluoride, so on. So I just want to say that's kind of the calling that I want. And I feel very emotional, even though I practice Buddhism and take the middle path. But I do believe that we have solutions, and we need to communicate and educate each other about it.
I want to speak for everybody in the room to say that your stories and your sentiments were heard here tonight, and most importantly, they were felt. And I think that's what we even walk away with just as much as the knowledge that we gain is the feelings. So thank you for that. And just as a vision to put out there for the future, Marcel and I were saying, what if this was every fall and every spring, and we did something to connect the watershed on a seasonal basis, and we have food and we share stories, and we take what we have here tonight and build on it and evolve. So I'll put that out there as a vision for where we can move. Thank you to our guests. Thank you for being here tonight. We appreciate it.